Endeavor Houston. Good morning to the remainder of the dog crew, and we sure do appreciate y'all working like dogs.
Good morning, good morning.
Endeavor, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event? WXIA, this is Houston. Please call Endeavor for a voice check.
Endeavor, this is WXIA. How do you hear me? Endeavor, this is WXIA. How do you hear me?
WXIA, this is Endeavor. We hear you loud and clear. How do you hear us?
You sound good to me. Captain Walker?
Yes, ma'am, that's me.
All right. I'm Jill Becker in Atlanta. Nice to talk to you this morning, sir. If it's all right with you, we were hoping to kind of skip some of the technical stuff that you are dealing with and ask you some personal questions about what it's like to be in space. Is that all right?
You can certainly ask anything you like, and we'll answer as best we can, Jill.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, now you've been up in space several times, and you've been up on this mission several days. What's the sleeping like up there? Anything different?
Well, sleeping in space is very individual, Jill. We all have our own ways of doing it. This flight, fortunately, has what we call sleep stations, which are really individual bunks for 4 of the crew members, and then the airlock is available for sleeping when the 4 bunks are occupied. So that's where I've been sleeping, and everybody's been sleeping pretty well. It's quite comfortable once you get used to it.
What about leisure time? And I'm not sure how much of that you actually have, but is there any downtime for you, and what do you do during your downtime?
Well, as you may imagine, we are pretty busy most of the time, partly because we're given a lot to do, and partly because we're very interested in our work, so we tend to sometimes overdo it a little, perhaps. There is planned leisure time, a little of it, and during that time we mostly watch the Earth or the sky. You get a really beautiful view of Mother Earth from here. In fact, our sunrise on the East Coast here as we speak, and so it's beautiful, and it's a great way to spend that little bit of leisure that we do have.
When you're on a lengthy mission like you're on, do you get at all anxious wanting to come back to Earth, or do you just enjoy the precious time that you've got up there?
I can only speak for myself personally, but it has been said by others as well that once you get up here and accustom yourself to the feeling of zero gravity, it's quite pleasant, and the view is gorgeous, and you're always very aware that you're very privileged, very fortunate to be here, and so most of us would actually stay a little longer if we had the chance, and I'd certainly like to make a plug for staying a little longer on the part of our crew right now for those who are listening and have the opportunity to control that.
We'll pass that along if they weren't able to hear. A couple other little just funky questions for you. You look clean shaven. How do you shave in space?
That's a real good question. Again, we do it different ways. We have both the conventional safety razors and electric razors. Being a veteran of many of these press conferences, I use the electric razor before the press conference.
And another, again, funky little question here. Do you all still drink Tang up there?
Again, I can only speak personally. Tang is not something that I ordinarily drink, and so I haven't had any up here. We have a wide variety of things to drink, various juices and mixed sugar and juice drinks. I've never seen anything labeled Tang in any of that.
All right. Your morning wake-up calls, I know you had Hard Day's Night, I believe, this morning from the Beatles. Any requests you'd like to send back to the guys at Mission Control?
Thank you, Jill. I appreciate the offer. Actually, the wake-up music is well controlled by our Capcoms, and our friends all participate in it. And we're getting a dog theme with ours, of course, because of the crew nickname. So we're happy to leave that in their capable hands. They've done really well so far.
All right. Well, good luck on your on the rest of your mission. I know you've got some
For Houston for
interesting work ahead of you, and we appreciate your taking the time to be with us today, Captain Walker.
Go ahead.
Well, it's a great privilege to be here, and I'm really happy to talk to you, and I hope that all your viewers will enjoy sharing as much of this
we've just
experience
noticed
as they can through the television, and
that
we'll
the
follow it.
attitude processing
We're doing
module
it for you much more than for us, as much
has
as we
done
do enjoy it.
a
Thanks a
reset.
lot.
Well,
Yeah.
well, blink your lights when you travel over Atlanta on your way home.
Yes, reset. And of course, as you know,
Just
the
like
nominal
the old saying
configuration
goes
is
that
no.
every airplane goes through Atlanta,
We believe
not
that
over it, close to
at
it,
some
and we'll certainly
point
do that.
the attitude
All right.
set.
Thank you, Captain Walker.
Good morning, Endeavor. Jim Boyd here, WCVB in Boston. Can Dave Walker hear me?
Jim, this is Dave. I hear you loud and clear.
Wow, this is incredible. How far away are you? 17,000 miles up or so?
Well, we're going about that fast, but we're really only about 220 miles above you as we speak.
You're speeding along at 17,000 miles per hour. Is that it?
Yes, it's low and fast as orbits go.
And up about 250 miles above the Earth. It's apparently taking a little bit of time for my audio to get up to you, so it's an interesting delay process we have here.
Well, I'll try to not walk on you, as we say in the trade, when we make our transmissions. Do you have some questions for me this morning?
Absolutely do. First question is, let me know. You set the scene for me. Let me know what you see when you're looking out your window right now.
Well, that's a very good lead-in. We're looking right down on Florida, West Palm Beach. I can see Lake Okeechobee. I can see, actually, the cloud cover is obscuring the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, and I can see a lot of airplane contrails headed for places south. Must be the winter tourists heading down to my home state of Florida. It's beautiful, and now, of course, as we're talking, we're moving, so we're passing out into the ocean off the coast of Florida, and in the time it's taken me to say this, we're headed down over the Caribbean. Out into the Atlantic, actually.
You're going southeast, is it?
Going southeast, actually at the top of our orbit, since it's an ellipse, it is an ellipse, but as you see it over the ground, it looks like a sinusoid. So we go from 28 degrees north on a map, on a global map, to 28 degrees south, traveling east all the time.
Give us a progress report on your mission. First of all, you had some difficulty in getting off the ground, twice delayed with this mission of Endeavor, and also you're having some difficulty with the Wake Shield satellite.
Well, one way to look at it, which we've considered, is that most of NASA's missions go so perfectly and with very little hitches that every now and again you have to have one where all the little hitches seem to catch up and it evens out. We've had more than our share of the little hitches, but the good news is that they haven't stopped us from getting done what we needed to do at all, and as the mission goes on, everything is smoothing out.
Including the hitches with getting the launch of the satellite. Now, the satellite is supposed to be trailing you for some period of time for you to determine whether or not the problems that existed have been repaired.
Well, in fact, its nominal profile, Jim, keeps it about 30 to 40 miles away from us, while the ground control personnel who are controlling the science on the satellite from the University of Houston do their controlling of that science, and we stand by to back them up should it be necessary due to loss of communications. That's all the way it's supposed to be, and in fact, that's been going better and better, and now we're in the middle of what we would consider our critical science period, where we're really getting some good science done as a team effort between the ground and and us here aboard Endeavour.
Things that we very seldom hear about and talk about is the enormous cost of satellites, the technology that you're dealing with, and the cost of the missions. Does that put an additional pressure on you and other members of the crew to make sure you get things done, get them done right, get them done on time?
Well, there is tremendous pressure on us to do things right and get things done on time. I think that's related mostly to the fact that we consider ourselves to be agents of the American people in the space program. It's the people's space program, and we're trying to do the best we can for them. The costs actually, first of all, are not something that we deal with on a daily basis, and second of all, are relatively small in absolute terms by comparison with what people spend on other things. NASA's budget is trivial by comparison with most other things, and we think the return is way in excess of what's invested.
So been talk of privatizing NASA and taking it out of the U.S. budget entirely, or at least to a degree than it is now. You have any impressions of that? Any opinions on that?
I have opinions. Right now, what we know about the process of privatization is, I think, insufficient for me to make a sensible answer to that. I do think, however, that NASA, as we have done business, has given the American people a great bargain. I don't think you'd want to pay my salary, for example, if I were a civilian contractor.
A good point. Let me ask you, you talked earlier about where you're headed in your projection in your orbit, and you were headed southeast over the Caribbean. While you're there, are you able to get a look at the Hurricane Luis and its progress, where it is now? And
Jim, we did see quite a bit of it the first day or two of the mission. However, it's moved far enough north now that it's not easy for us to observe. We do get an excellent opportunity to see the weather patterns in what they call the hurricane belt as we head here towards Africa, and there is constant activity down there. It's real obvious that the whole world is ocean, or an awful lot of it is ocean, and most of that ocean is generating weather at this time of year.
And again, to talk about your orbit, now you said that you were over Florida when we started our conversation just about 10 minutes ago. At this point, is there any projection for you to be over Boston or over the New England area anytime in the next 24 hours or so?
No, I may go visit my family in Boston after the flight, but that's as close as I'm going to get to it anytime soon. We go no farther north on a map of the United States than about 28 degrees because we launched due east out of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. That is the northernmost point of our orbit, so we don't get to see nearly as much of our homeland as we would like to, and as I've been able to observe on previous missions that have gone a little further north in latitude.
And Commander, one last question for you, and that is assess the mission at this point. Are you considering it a success, and everything is going to wind up safely back home on time?
Oh, I consider it a great success. I hope the people that really matter, that being the American public, do so as well. We've had minor hitches and some that could have been more than minor had they not been responded to properly by the ground controllers in Houston and by the crew on orbit. We've been well trained to do what we do. The people who help us do this are the best in the world, and this has already been a considerable success, and I think will be a great success before it's through. There's some really good science being done, and we're progressing every bit as well as we would have hoped. It just hasn't been quite as easy to get to this point as it would be if everything had gone perfectly.
Andrew, it's been very pleasurable talking with you for this morning. Continue to enjoy a successful and a safe flight, and see you home.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoyed talking to you and to all the American people who are hopefully watching this in the Boston area. Hello from Endeavour, and we're real happy to be doing this in your behalf.
And we have the downlink.
Okay, great. Before before we start with the video, which we intend to narrate, we did want to take a moment as a crew to express our thanks to somebody real special to us who's no longer with the shuttle program per se, but who had a lot to do with getting us where we are now, and we're very much appreciative of it. And we wanted to take an opportunity to say thanks to Brewster Shaw, who left the program, as you remember, late in our flow, after having made some real crucial decisions about the boosters and having managed the program tremendously well for quite a while. He's been well succeeded, of course, by Tommy Holloway, but Brewster's special to us, and we wanted to thank him personally and directly for all he did up to and including being on the roof with our families at the launch and holding Madeline's hand and just generally being the great guy he's always been. Brewster, you'll always be a dog to us. Woof, 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 woof. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my production manager for videos, the wily Dogface, who is going to start the narration and the video downlink.
I'll start the narration. I'm just showing what it is that pilots like to do best, which is sleep and eat. Right now we'll show the eating part. It's more dynamic. I know a lot of you know all about this, but the food comes in many different varieties. Some is prepackaged in little packets that you can just throw in the oven and let it warm up prior to eating. Others comes in bottles that we bring aboard. This is some of Red Dog's barbecue sauce. Not everyone's favorite. Certainly Red Dog's favorite. We got some cans of fruit. Our drink comes in bags, and some vegetables that I have in my other hand also comes in little containers that need to be hydrated. Dogface is doing the filming for us here, and he's showing the water squirting into this rice dish. I really enjoy eating vegetables while on orbit. I like them pretty well on Earth as well, but on orbit I like vegetables better than sweet things, and so a lot of my meals are as well as some meat, several servings of veggies.
And where are the shrimp?
Story, I think you got most of them in the program.
Yes, sir.
And with every meal, a nice cup of coffee in a bag.
We are getting an excellent picture. Composition, lighting, everything. It's perfect.
Well, as you know, our production manager is the wily Jim Voss. He does an excellent job. And I want to take this opportunity to give the crew's thanks to the flight control teams. You all guys have always been great during this flight, during this training flow, and really having worked down there where you are some, I can tell that this is an excellent team.
Thanks. Got a bunch of smiles around here.
And while we're on the subject of food, we'd like to give our thanks to Gloria and Vicky, call sign Dog Food, that have helped to select and prepare these wonderful items. And over to Red Dog.
Okay, this is one of our more interesting secondary, well, actually it's a DSO, but it's got enough stuff to do that it almost has taken on the character of a secondary payload. This is the Portable Clinical Blood Analyzer DTO 492B, and there's in my hand the instrument which does the blood analyzing. Pretty nifty little gadget. What you do is, after fading out and fading back in, the doctor is in, is the facade behind that. But what you do is you use a little sticker to take some blood from a victim subject, and once the subject has given you his blood, and it's not very much blood, fortunately, since some of the subjects are more willing than others to be vampired. You take a small capillary tube, put the blood into a little cartridge, self-contained cassette, that then goes into the portable clinical blood analyzer, the little remote control device that I showed you there. And in a minute and 20 seconds, it gives you a pretty good blood analysis. And the thing is just terrific. We've been very pleased with the way it works, and this is one of those DSOs that actually works better in space than it does on the ground, at least partially because the blood is a heck of a lot easier to get into this little capillary tube up here where gravity is not trying to force it down onto the floor. It just climbs right up in the capillary tube. It's real easy to do all the procedures that I struggled with in training, and the life sciences folks deserve an attaboy for the composition design of this particular DSO. It's actually kind of fun to do, except for the part where you have to calibrate the machine, which isn't too nifty.
Copy, Dave.
Now, there you see the blood itself in the capillary tube, and Cujo's actually shooting the camera. He's going to zoom in there, and you can see it's just a little cassette. It's got electrodes on the front end of it that interface with the portable clinical blood analyzer innards once you get it inside, and you never have any blood to clean up. All the mess is contained in a small biohazard bag, and it's definitely better and easier than the kind of blood draws that we have done in other occasions, different situations. This is going to have a lot of applicability. In fact, it probably already does for emergency room medicine and remote medicine type things. And believe me, if I can do this, anybody can do it. Because I'm the fighter pilot, flight surgeon type when it comes to this stuff.
Looks great.
I knew that would appeal to the surgeon or to the doctor side of you story, that you would appreciate it. And that's basically the procedure. I think we've covered it pretty well. There's the PCBA itself, and the little cartridge goes in there, and you just punch in your patient ID numbers and operator ID numbers, and shortly we'll see the answers, which fortunately in our case so far have been indicative of normal levels of the various constituents of the blood. This is well, it has application to many different experiments in the life sciences world, so it doesn't really matter too much what, but sure does make the process of collecting blood for any scientific purpose easier on orbit, and one would assume in other difficult situations. Okay, this is running on longer than we realized when we did it, so I'm not trying to hog all the video time. We We're going to try and show you what the display itself looks like. And helps a lot to turn it on. I told you I was a fighter pilot. And it's really hard to see in the video, but it's a graphic display and it works really well. Okay, here is Underdog to talk about exercise.
Well, even though we stay busy, it's real important to schedule time for exercise, and it's real important in space. On Earth, you have your own weight to react forces against. In space, of course, you don't. And so we come up with exercises where you can either react forces against your own body, as I was just doing with that red Dynaband, or position yourself such that any force you generate is reacted in such a way that you stay in a stable configuration. And in such a way, you can isolate muscle groups and actually get a really good workout. And typically, we're scheduled for an hour-and-a-half exercise, and that entails time to get ready to exercise, as well as time to clean up after the exercise. And oops, there goes some paper floating by, but we actually do get quite a good workout, and it really does make you feel a lot better. And you always have to be thinking about Newton up here, because if you don't, you never know what's going to happen to you. And I think you'll see an example of that here in a minute. Here I'm doing some shoulder extension exercises.
Underdog, you know just how amazed I am.
And if you don't watch out, whoa, it's Superman.
Hello, this is Pluto, and I'd like to take you on a short tour of the orbiter wide web. We have 9 PGSCs on board. We have a number of different experiments that we're doing with them, as well as operational use of them in order to help us with operating the space shuttle. There's the mail disk bag. To its left, we have the heart of the orbiter wide web. It's the data distribution center. The PCMMU data from the orbiter comes into that machine and is distributed where it needs to go. This experiment here is the GPS, relative GPS experiment, and next to it is the MPD, a manipulator position development experiment. For the rendezvous, we've positioned what we normally use as the world map. We've positioned up by the commander so that he can use RPOP, the Rendezvous and Prox Ops program, in order to help him fly. Currently, we have a world map on it. We'll have it up using the Rendezvous and Prox Ops program tomorrow for the Wake Shield rendezvous, as we did for Spartan. Now, on the middeck, we didn't have quite enough room on the flight deck. On the middeck, we have 2 other PGSCs. One of them is being used for the Goddard experiments, the Spartan, the CONCAP, and so on and so forth. The other one is the other part of the GPS experiment. The relative GPS is a particular favorite of this crew, as my crewmates like to remind me. And what it is doing is it's using the orbiter GPS data and comparing it with the Wake Shield GPS data. And that allows us to get an accurate relative state vector between the two. We think in the future our FIDOs and flight controllers will find this very useful as we get the orbiter into the latter part of the 20th century. In addition to the GPS data, it also has a world map which we can use to show where we are. This is the complement of PGSCs on the middeck. Of all 9, all of them are actually in use on the flight days involving the Wake Shield. We also have a pilot computer for use as a landing refresher for the commander and pilot, but we couldn't find a way to tie that one into the orbiter wide web in the short period of time that we had. But we almost forgot a couple of very important PGSCs. Those are back on the flight deck, giving us a total of 7 on the flight deck. And those 2 are for the wake shield. The wake shield is part of its own mini-web, and it communicates with, the PGSCs communicate with the wake shield, allowing us to see the wake shield data and to back up the wake shield POC in its commanding and data monitoring. We're flying over Africa in this video scene, taking a quick last look at the orbiter wide web. We're using, for this period of time, we're using an old PGSC for the world map in front. The old ones can't be interfaced to the orbiter wide web yet. Now we're focusing on the wake shield PGSCs. And here's the PGSC for commanding the wake shield on its free flight, its 2-day free flight. It's out there right now doing science, growing semiconductors. And here's another PGSC for monitoring the data. The real problem with data is that in this day and age, there's so much information that we can't have it all on one computer. We really need the extra data screens in order to be able to see all the data at the appropriate times. It was quite a pleasure. At first, my payload commander, Jim Voss, told me that we had too many PGSCs, and just recently, both he and my commander asked why we don't have more. Done by then.
This is one of our secondary payloads, the Commercial Generic Bioprocessing Apparatus, CGBA. Red Dog and I have been doing this one throughout the flight. It's sponsored primarily by the University of Colorado and Kansas State Ames Research Center. Dr. Mark Edwards out at University of Colorado has been the primary person we've worked with. It has 29 experiments with 152 different test tube type things called fluid processing apparatus. It has a lot of different things in it: biological processes, waste management, microbial control. Here you see me deactivating actually about 7 of the test tubes that are inside the canister. In this group activation pack, there are a series of test tubes, and you turn the crank to push a plate down that mixes fluids. We mix them first, have it do its process here on orbit, and then we deactivate it later, like I'm doing right now. You can see in the container, which is an incubator, keeping it warm, a lot of different of the gaps that have many of the different 152 different things going on. Some of the interesting things they're doing with these are 3D polymer matrices with a protein data storage medium. They're also looking at some different materials for disinfecting bacterial contamination, both for water purification on space and in Earth. That's a University of, or Kansas State University experiment. There's some bone marrow growth, immune suppression system out of Kansas State, and a lot of different things that they're working on: medical disorders, drug development, microbial control. It's one of the ones that you get a lot of bang for your buck. An interesting type one.
Our production values have suffered just slightly by virtue of the fact that we've had primary mission stuff to perform here. We're now over the Gulf, and we should be looking at Corpus Christi and the inland waterway up the Gulf Coast.
We're getting a great picture.
You can just go right along the coast there and should be able to find Houston here shortly. This is pretty good viewing of the Gulf for this time of year. There's not as much haze as we sometimes encounter. Hope you guys are having good weather. I suspect it's kind of hot, Story.
It's been a little warm, up to 93 degrees, but it has been an early fall here.
Well, as much as we love it up here, we like being home, and although we're going to enjoy it as long as we can, including milking you guys for as much extra as we can, we'll be happy to see you when we get back. If you look above the cloud layer, you can see all the contrails of the airliners going back and forth. Pretty interesting indication of the age we live in.
Yes, sir, we got a good view of them.
weather for the CAT crew. This will just hold until they get ready to launch. Now we're over the southern part of the peninsula. We're centered up on Lake Okeechobee. Now you can pull back and see the entire Florida Peninsula. Is that not pretty?
Yes, it's fantastic. It's unbelievable how clear the peninsula is.
Yeah, this is nice weather down home. Jim said he ought to be taking pictures instead of showing these to you, but I think this is worth sharing with people. It's as close as you can come to being here, and as you know, it's missing a lot of the other sensations, but the cameras we've got these days really enable us to share a lot. There's the South Florida, the end of the peninsula, the beginning of the Keys, and here come the Bahamas. Okay, as you go into the handover, we'll give you this picture, and that'll probably close us out. Can you see that, Story?
Yes, sir. We have it.
Well, the message from our perspective is that we sure would like to be going back there. We think that and the other orbiting satellites of other planets and of the sun are the places we ought to be going next.